James Cameron, the review. Let's start with his first movie, which is really his best movie, and I'm joking. Piranha 2. Now, I don't know much about this aside from the fact that I think he got the job because he was able to make maggots move for a special effects shot by giving them electric shocks. So he was very inventive in terms of like how to make a scene happen, and that impressed somebody. I think he wanted his name removed from this movie. It was his first movie, you know what I mean? Give the guy a break. He's just trying to break into the industry like we all are. Maybe some of us are trying to break out of the industry. Terminator, 1984, and I was like, I know it's 1984 that movie came out, and then I double checked, and yeah, it was, and I think it's almost indelibly 1984. It's probably like the biggest event of 1984. I remember going to the video store. I was born in 77, so I was probably like, 7 years old, if I could do math. And I would see the video in the video store, the Terminator, and it looked so cool. And it remains as like just a great movie. Behind the scenes, James Cameron married his editor for that movie, which just kind of shows the kind of drive this kind of guy has, where like, well, let's just get married because we're both working on the same movie, and it's just effective. It's just logical. Her name is Gail Ann Hurd. It kind of reminds me of Hitchcock, where behind the scenes, his wife was heavily involved in the making of Psycho. If you ever see the movie, I think Anthony Hopkins plays Hitchcock. Let's talk a little bit about Gail Ann Hurd. The unknown soldier, right? The person who worked heavily and was highly responsible for James Cameron's success, but didn't get much props. She produced The Terminator. She produced Aliens. She produced The Abyss. She produced a movie called Alien Nation, which very few people will know of, but I've seen it, from 1988. And they made a TV show out of it. She produced Tremors, which is a classic, cult classic. She produced Terminator 2. She produced, I'm just scrolling, Dante's Peak. I've heard of it. I think it's Pierce Brosnan. She produced Armageddon. That's not something to be proud of. She produced Dick, which apparently my ex-girlfriend was telling me was actually a good movie about Watergate. She produced the Hulk movie, which I think was the Eric Bana version. She produced Terminator 3. Well, she got a Terminator 3 credit because she has part ownership, or had part ownership, of the Terminator franchise. She produced Aeon Flux, starring Charlize Theron at her hottest. Then she produced the Incredible Hulk. She produced Last Man Standing. I think that's like a Denzel Washington movie. She produced what the fuck? Walking Dead. She had an involvement in Walking Dead. So I mean, let's not forget that like James Cameron didn't get where he was or do what he did without help. People like to imagine that James Cameron and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, they did it all on their own. They didn't, right? Star Wars, George Lucas had plenty of people who like fixed up like messes, what would have been messes. Like Brian De Palma, it was his idea for there to be an opening crawl for Star Wars. That was his idea. There were artists who designed the whole Darth Vader look. That wasn't all George Lucas, right? It kind of reminds me also of Stan Lee, the guy who's credited for like creating the whole Marvel universe, Stan Lee. When in fact, most of, if not many of his characters were not created by him. He just got the credit. He just got the credit for it, and he took the credit, and he was happy to say, "I created Spider-Man," but he wasn't technically allowed to say he created Spider-Man. He had to like say, "Well, when I thought of an idea, and then that became Spider-Man." Right? Like he in interviews, he was always careful to not say he created Spider-Man because he didn't. Right? There's all these unsung heroes who created all of these characters, like Daredevil, blah blah blah. But everybody just, oh, it was all Stan Lee. No, it wasn't. And Star Wars was not all George Lucas, and Terminator was not all James Cameron. I don't even know if Terminator made a lot of money at the time at the box office, but I can say that I think it changed action movies. Like, it redefined action movies the same way Die Hard, spawned, decades of copycat movies. I think I heard once that James Cameron, every shot had to be unique and interesting. Like, if there was going to be a bullet shot in an action scene, it had to be interesting. That was kind of like his approach. It wouldn't just be some dumb gunshot, as like most crappy movies have. No, there had to be something unique going on in every shot, which is pretty cool. I like the fact that he's a perfectionist, and I respect his attention to detail and the quality of this film and many of his films. I'm not going to say he's an artist. I don't think he's a high artist. I don't think cinema is pretty crap, really, to be honest. But I'm never saying this is great. If I say great, I'm saying like, a rotten egg, like how great, okay, it's a 10 out of 10 rotten egg. But this movie definitely put James Cameron on the map. Then 2 years later, 1986, he comes out with Aliens. I remember I would have been 9 years old. I used to see the poster in the video store for this movie. And you know what? As a 9-year-old, I thought Ripley was a guy. I always thought it was a guy from the poster. In this movie, I don't know when I saw it. I probably wasn't 9 when I saw it. I was probably a lot older. And you know what? I think I only saw the first Alien movie once, and I didn't like it. I thought it was boring as hell. But Aliens was a perfect movie. Just perfect. I don't know what to say. How are you supposed to say something about something that's perfect? Okay, the only thing I can say is how me and my friends used to joke about how she goes, the little girl in Newt, she goes, "They mostly come out at night. Mostly." So there's my only criticism of Aliens. And in retrospect, when we hear all these Me Too advocates and all these idiots, these jerks that have ruined the left, when we hear them talk about, oh, this is the first, Rey is the first female character, empowered female. Everybody always goes back to, well, what about Ripley? Okay, the cool thing about this movie, in case you haven't seen it, is that she goes in with a group of like trained military tough guys, like Navy SEAL, heavily trained, heavily equipped people. And she's the only one that survives, and they all get wiped out because she's smarter and tougher than all of them. And it's done realistically, and it's done well. Okay? So to the left, nobody hates women, okay? You just gotta do them nice. Treat them with respect. Also, I'm just speculating here, but maybe James Cameron invented the idea of the climax after the climax. So like, say, in Terminator, the first Terminator movie, you think the Terminator's dead, but then no. It bursts out and it's in flames, and it's, and you see him in the Terminator in full Terminator, without its skin, right? Whereas before then, I think most action movies, or whatever you call these movies, it would have just ended with that. But no, James Cameron had to say, no, he's going to burst out, and now there's going to be like, after the climax, you thought it was over, but we're going to amp it up a little bit. And he does the same thing with Aliens, where You know, you think that the Queen is dead, right? And you think everything's happily ever after, right? But then you find out, no, 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 no. The Queen was secretly, hitchhiking on the spaceship. So the climax after the climax. I think he may have invented that in terms of movies. The Abyss came out in 1989 and it was a flop. I think it's James Cameron's only flop, aside from Piranha 2. You may not know this. I'm making these videos for the younger generations who don't know this stuff, and I'm also giving them my experience having. I was a kid when these movies, having been a kid when these movies came out. The Abyss. The only thing interesting about this movie was the fact that James Cameron came across a visual technology that would lead to the Liquid Terminator. It was kind of a forgettable movie. I don't know. It's about aliens at the bottom of the ocean. It's pretty bad, I guess. No, Terminator 2 has a very personal. Is very personal for me because I must have been what came out in '91, so I would have been 14, and I had just discovered, probably around the age of 12, Guns N' Roses, and I was obsessed with Guns N' Roses. It was the first, it was my first experience liking a music album. That was Appetite for Destruction. And so this movie comes out, and it features a new song from their new album, Use Your Illusion. So I couldn't have been more hyped. I don't think any of us children could have been more hyped for Terminator 2. And this is his greatest accomplishment. This movie is like perfection. Again, I don't consider film to be art, but this is about as good as cinema ever has been and ever will be. I remember when I first watched it as a 14-year-old, I guess, I couldn't believe how the action just never stopped. It was just unrelenting. I remember the movie theater that I saw it at. I don't think it exists anymore, that movie theater. It was in Etobicoke. It was by Kipling and Bloor. And I think I saw some of my friends in line to watch. Maybe I'm incorrect. I think Batman Returns was playing at the same time as Terminator 2. So I went to see Terminator 2, I think, while Batman Returns was playing. And I saw one of my classmates in line for Batman Returns, and he was talking about how hot the Catwoman was. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's a separate occasion. But I did see it in the theater, and I did see it at that theater that I'm talking about. Aside from how great the movie is the fact that it introduced that whole CGI, shape-shifting stuff that's even used today, right? Where, you make somebody shrink or grow, or you change their face changes. That Liquid Terminator technology was used and is still used, I believe, to this day. So I don't know who invented that, whether that was James Cameron or whether that was his special effects team, but they revolutionized all movies with this movie. And speaking of strong female characters, Sarah Connor just kicks the living shit out of everybody. And I'm sorry, she'll beat the hell out of Snow White, modern day Snow White, the empowered Snow White. She'll beat the shit out of the Acolyte and all that female empowerment crap. I kind of want to see one of these modern day feminist Me Too idiots and be like, hold my beer, meet Sarah Connor, and now shut the F up. True Lies, 1994. It was just a silly movie. It wasn't a big deal. It was just. I think he wasn't allowed to make more Terminator movies because he lost the rights or something like that, and it was just a fun action movie, and there's really not a lot to say about it, except that Jamie Lee Curtis has a really hot body. I didn't realize how hot her body was until that movie. I always thought she was unattractive until that movie. So there you go. 1997 Titanic. Now the thing about this is that this came up right after a movie called Waterworld, which was like a huge, colossal bomb. So they were the industry insiders. The word on the street, because I don't think we had the internet, was that this movie was going to sink like the Titanic. Like it was going to be a huge failure. It cost too much money, just like Waterworld did. It was going to bankrupt everybody. But it ended up being a huge success. I don't know. It's a fun movie. It's almost like you got to watch it in two different ways. You can watch it and marvel at the majesty of recreating the Titanic and recreating the how the ship sank. So you can watch it on that level and you're like, wow, that's awesome. Or you can watch it as a chick and be like, oh, look, there's a love story. Isn't this so... Oh my... It's a gripping love story. So... Or you can watch it in both ways. So it's kind of like a wishy-washy, speaking of water, movie. Where it's like, yeah, I don't know, it's alright. But I think this really taught James Cameron a big lesson, which was that you can make a lot of money if you include like a love story kind of thing, because that brings women into the theaters. Which is a setback for cinema, I think, if you want to call it an art, which I don't. Unfortunately, Christopher Nolan fell into the same trap where he realized, oh, as long as I have a chase scene, and as long as I've got like somebody shoot a gun, and as long as I've got a love story, then I've got the entire audience. Like, that's every demographic, right? Whereas I kind of just want to see, whatever. What was that movie called? Memento? I just want to see a dream within a dream. But he's got to add all this crap that has nothing to do with anything. But he just wants more demographics. He wants the women to come. He wants the idiots who watch Fast and the Furious movies to come, right? So it's sad. That's the depressing thing about the Titanic. I would say the Titanic sunk the movie industry in a way. Okay, Avatar sucks, and it was made in 2009, and I saw it in the theater, and I remember leaving the theater afterwards thinking, I feel so sorry for James Cameron. He just this is going to be such a bomb. That's what I was thinking. And then my mother was like, hey, you want to go see Avatar? And I'm like, okay, because we can see it in 3D now, because I didn't see it in the full, 3D thing the first time. So I watched it a second time. I don't know, man, it's a forgettable, bad movie. It's got a good message, which is about, protecting nature. So I want it to succeed. But unfortunately, it's just kind of like, like Pocahontas in space, It's a far cry from like what I got from Aliens or Terminator 2. This was just like, there's like nothing here. Nobody's ever going to rewatch this movie. A friend told me that for a lot of reasons, Avatar is especially good worldwide. It has worldwide appeal. And I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that, but for an example, Star Wars. I think Star Wars has never had an appeal in China. Okay? They just don't get it. They don't like it. They don't care. And that's a huge box office. So for some reason, Avatar seems to translate well, literally, with every country and every language. Avatar 2, I was like really thinking this was going to fail too, because it had been like 10 years since the previous one. And I'm just like, I think everybody's forgotten about Avatar. So I came out of hiding to go see this movie in the theater with the full 3D everything. I can mainly say I'm proud of myself because I hadn't really come out of hiding since the pandemic. I was just proud of myself that I was able to sit through it without having to take... I sat through the whole movie without taking a leak, so I'm just really proud of myself for that. Otherwise, it's a totally forgettable movie. I don't know what to say. Actually, I do know what to say. James Cameron hit his peak with Terminator and Terminator 2 and Aliens. And everything else he's done has been a disappointment. I want to give Avatar some respect for trying to put forth a message about, climate change and we got to take care of nature. Like, that's a powerful, important message to make. I just don't think he made the message very powerfully with this movie. The movie sucked. So, in summation, which is a word I've never used, I don't think, in my entire life, and I'm not even sure if I'm using it correctly. In summation, to summarize, James Cameron should have quit after Aliens and Terminator 2, and he would have been known as like, oh my god, wow. And if he really cares about the environment, then he could have put money into that, but instead he made these two stupid Avatar movies. And they are bad, I'm sorry, like, I try to like them, but they're not. And then there's going to be another one, and how many millions of dollars into this nonsense about, what's the planet called? Oh, it's called Pandora, like after Pandora's box? Is there anything behind? I've never even thought about that. What does that even mean? So would I want James Cameron's life? Yes, if I could stop it at Terminator 2 and then just go down as a legend and maybe do something else, do my deep sea diving. I don't respect what he's done after that. After Terminator 2, just, what was it? Like Avatar, True Lies, just crap, right? Just crap. That's not how I would want to spend my life after making Terminator 2. And like, if you want to make a whole documentary about the Titanic, that's great. Then just do that. But don't put a stupid love story in there that nobody's ever going to remember, nobody cares about. What, Jack, paint me. I want you to paint me as one of your... Paint me naked. Like, what the hell? And Billy Zane, I've got a child. Please, put me on the boat. I've got a child. Oh, and that whole bullshit about, she throws her earring into the ocean or something. Like, what the hell? Come on, guys.